Welcome to Starbound's second channel. My name is Veronica and I'll be your narrator today. But before we get into today's story, please check below to see if you've subscribed to our channel. It's 100% free and just allows our stories to pop up on your feed more often. Her name and memories had been erased, and only her mission remained. The coordinates flashed across Agent 3's tactical display overlay, illuminating the interior of her helmet with a white glow. A modulated voice, neither male nor female, spoke directly into her ear. "Your next target is in this tent," the voice said, clinical and emotionless. "3 human soldiers were spotted by the drones. This is your chance to eliminate them." "Roger that," Agent 3 replied, her voice equally flat. Her fingers, encased in the exosuit's flexible polymer gloves, tightened around the edge of the partially collapsed wall she was using as cover. She was perched atop a semi-destroyed building, one of many that dotted the landscape of what had once been a thriving metropolitan area. Now it was just another battlefield, another mission, another day in her existence. She didn't question the order she had just received. Why would she? Her life consisted solely of receiving orders and executing them, then eating, drinking water, sleeping exactly 6 hours, and repeating the cycle again. It was all she knew, all she was permitted to know. The Slimerians had designed her routine for her. Wake up at precisely 0600 hours, consume nutritional supplement alpha with 500 milliliters of water, perform physical maintenance exercises for 45 minutes, check equipment, receive mission briefing, execute mission, return for debrief, consume nutritional supplement beta, perform weapons and equipment maintenance, sleep at 0 hours, repeat. No variations, no deviations, no questions. Each day bled into the next in an endless cycle of obedience and execution. Before preparing her equipment, Agent 3 reached for the small mirror secured to her utility belt. She didn't know why she always checked her appearance before a mission. Her voice had never instructed her to do so. It simply felt right somehow, a compulsion she couldn't explain, but also couldn't ignore. Perhaps it was to ensure her helmet was seated correctly, or to verify no equipment was out of place. That would be the logical explanation. Yet something deeper drove the ritual. The face that stared back at her was smudged with dirt and grime, with beads of sweat carving clean trails through the dust. Her long black hair was matted against her forehead and temples, escaping in rebellious tendrils from the tight bun at the base of her skull. Her amber eyes, sharp and alert, reminded her of the knives she carried on her exosuit's belt. Those eyes never missed anything. They were her greatest weapon, even more than the rifle strapped to her back. She noted the small scar that ran along her jawline, a flaw in her otherwise symmetrical face. She had no memory of how she had acquired it. Had it been a battle injury? An accident? The question formed and dissolved in the same instant, unimportant to her mission parameters. Still, her fingers traced the line briefly before she secured the mirror and began her pre-mission ritual. First, a systems check on her exosuit. The Slimerian combat exoskeleton was a great achievement of their engineering, adapted specifically for her physiology. The matte black outer shell was composed of flexible armor plating that moved with her body like a second skin, yet could withstand most conventional ballistic weapons. Beneath the plating ran a network of hydraulic muscles, multiplying her strength tenfold. She flexed her fingers, watching as diagnostic information scrolled across her HUD. Green lights indicated optimal functionality in all systems. The exosuit's neural interface connected directly to her nervous system through a series of fine filaments at the base of her skull, the same location where pain would usually erupt. These connections allowed for instantaneous response to her movement, but also served as a conduit for the voice to monitor and, when necessary, interfere with her actions. The weight of the suit, nearly 60 pounds of advanced technology, felt like nothing when it was powered. It was an extension of herself, as familiar as her own limbs. though she had no memory of first wearing it or learning to operate it. Next came the weapons check. Agent 3 recovered her sniper rifle from her back, a long, sleek instrument of death. Her hands moved gently as she verified the weapon's condition, though she couldn't have named a single component if asked. The magazine slid smoothly into place with a satisfying click. The scope powered on automatically, interfacing with her helmet display. She worked the bolt, chambering around. The action was fluid, natural, like breathing. With her equipment verified, Agent 3 checked the intelligence again. She closed her eyes, allowing the neural interface of her helmet to project the drone footage directly into her mind. The tent appeared from multiple angles, each providing new information. The network of Slammerian drones was an extension of herself, a tool she had been trained to use. Or at least, that's what the voice told her. Following the voice's instructions was the only line of thought her shackled imagination was allowed to explore. The visual information flowed into her consciousness, a black and green tent, small and unassuming, assembled beneath the broad branches of a native tree. Nearby bushes provided additional cover for the occupants, though they would offer no protection from a rifle's advanced projectiles. Agent 3 methodically analyzed the terrain, using the drones to identify the optimal firing position. She needed elevation, a clear line of sight, and a secure extraction route. The area was mostly flat, with scattered ruins providing the only significant changes in elevation. She calculated wind speed, atmospheric pressure, and gravitational variations, all factors that could affect her shot at extreme range. The data flowed through her consciousness, processed instantly and without conscious effort. She settled on the ceiling of a Croatian building approximately 1.2 kilometers from the target. The structure had been built centuries before the original inhabitants of this planet, long before the war had reduced their civilization to rubble. Decision made, she strapped her rifle to her back and oriented herself toward her destination. The distance was considerable, but with her enhanced capabilities, it would take less than 5 minutes to traverse. She jumped. The exosuit's leg enhancers catapulted her dozens of feet into the air, far higher than any unaugmented body could achieve. The sensation of weightlessness gripped her for a moment before gravity reasserted itself. As she descended toward another rooftop, her mind registered an unexpected emotion: joy. She didn't understand why launching herself through the air, defying gravity, brought her such pleasure. It wasn't part of the mission parameters. It wasn't relevant to her objective. Yet there it was, a spark of something inexplicable lighting up neural pathways that should have remained dormant. She landed where she wanted and immediately launched herself toward the next building. Each jump brought the same burst of inexplicable satisfaction. Gravity and the uneven terrain meant nothing to her. Rooftop to rooftop, she advanced toward the targets. The suit's impacted absorbers negated the shock of each landing, converting kinetic energy back into the system to enhance her next leap. Mid-flight between two structures, Agent 3 did something unprecedented. In an action that felt simultaneously logical and forbidden, she lifted her helmet's visor. The gentle breeze caressed her face, cooling her sweat-slicked skin. The sensation was pleasant. Her mind registered no tactical advantage to this action, yet she had performed it anyway. A small furrow appeared between her brows, the closest she came to questioning her own behavior. The visor snapped back into place as she continued her approach. Through a series of calculated jumps, she left the ruins of the Croatian city behind, entering the less densely populated outskirts. The landscape changed from urban debris to scattered vegetation, hardly plants that had survived the ecological disruption of planetary warfare. Slammerian terraforming efforts had altered the composition of the soil in controlled areas, but here, at the periphery, native species still clung to existence. The building she had selected came into view, a partially collapsed observatory, its dome long since shattered, but its main structure still sound. The Caribbeans had been avid astronomers, fascinated by the cosmos. This facility had once housed advanced telescopes and research equipment, all now destroyed or looted. Only the skeletal framework remained, a perfect vantage point for her purposes. A short sprint across a clearing, followed by a soundless jump, and there she was, nearly a mile from the target, but with her enhanced optics, she could already see the tree under which her targets were sheltering. The tent was exactly as the drone footage had shown, tucked away in what the occupants likely thought was a secure location. They had chosen poorly. The site offered good visibility of the surrounding area, but had failed to account for long-range observation from elevated positions. Her voice resonated in her head once more. "You have permission to engage, Agent 3. Eliminate all hostiles." She unslung her rifle and assumed a prone firing position at the edge of the observatory's platform. The weapon felt like an extension of herself as she deployed the bipod and adjusted her posture for maximum stability. Her breathing slowed automatically, her heart rate declining to ensure minimal movements that might affect her aim. The exosuit locked into position, further reducing potential tremors or shifts. Through her scope, she observed the front of the tent clearly. 3 human soldiers, all male, all wearing the distinctive camouflage pattern of Earth's defense forces. The enemy. The targets the voice wanted eliminated. She saw them clearly. One with a broad face and a close-cropped blonde hair, another darker skinned with a carefully trimmed beard, the third younger than the others, possibly not even 20 years old. These details registered as identification markers, nothing more. One sat on a rock, consuming what appeared to be standard military ration pack. His posture was relaxed, legs stretched out before him, rifle leaning against the rock with easy reach but not in hand. He laughed at something, tossing a packet to his companion. Another lounged at the tent entrance, his back against a supply crate, helmet off and resting beside him. He was speaking, gesturing with his hands to emphasize whatever story he was telling. A thin scar ran across his left cheek, similar to the one Agent 3 had noted on her own face earlier. The third paced the perimeter, more alert than his companions, but still relaxed. Clearly not expecting danger this far from the front lines. He paused occasionally to join the conversation, his young face animated. At one point, all 3 erupted in laughter, a moment of camaraderie in the midst of a war. Agent 3 aligned her crosshairs with the chest of the eating soldier, the easiest target. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger, applying just enough pressure to take up the slack. The targeting system calculated the shot automatically, accounting for distance, wind, and movement. The probability of success displayed in the corner of her vision, 99.7%, a guaranteed kill. Yet she didn't fire. Her heart was beating faster than normal, not slower as her training would dictate. A thin sheen of sweat formed on her palms, despite the suit's environmental controls. As she observed their easy camaraderie, something stirred within her. The soldier at the tent entrance had said something that made the others laugh. Their smiles triggered something, a response her mind couldn't process or understand. Why hadn't she fired? Her finger was touching the trigger. The shot was clear. The mission parameters were explicit. A fragment of thought formed and dissolved. They look like... But the comparison had no reference point in her limited experience. She knew only the Slimerians, with their gelatinous bodies and multifaceted sensory organs, and other agents like herself, glimpsed occasionally in the corridors of the base. These men were clearly enemies. The voice had identified them as such. Yet something in their humanity resonated with her in a way she couldn't articulate. "Agent 3, why are you hesitating?" The voice cut through her confusion like a knife. "You are displaying anomalous behavior. Why are you different today? You are taking too long. The voice had never questioned her before, had never needed to. She had always executed her missions as told, without hesitation or error. What was happening to her? Why couldn't she complete the simple action of squeezing the trigger? Before she could process the question, pain erupted at the base of her skull, white-hot and all-encompassing. It radiated outward through her neural pathways, a punishment and a correction simultaneously. The world lost all color, fading to grayscale as if someone had drained the reality around her. The trigger beneath her fingers suddenly felt weightless, insignificant. No hesitation anymore, just purpose. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, the sound dampened by her helmet's audio filters. Through the scope, she watched the first target, the man eating his meal, jerk backward, a spray of red misting the air behind him. The high-velocity round had entered through his chest and exited his back, creating a shock wave that damaged surrounding tissue beyond repair. His limbs went slack, the ration pack falling from nerveless fingers. Before his companions could fully register what had happened, Agent 3 had already reacquired her sight picture on the second target. The man at the tent entrance had begun to react, his relaxed posture suddenly tense, his eyes widening in shock and confusion. His hand moved toward his weapon, but the movement was futile, too slow to save him. He only managed a half rise before Agent 3 pulled the trigger again. The round caught him in the chest, throwing him backward into the tent's fabric wall. The third soldier, the young one, reacted with commendable speed, diving behind the tent for cover. In a conventional engagement, this might have bought him some precious seconds. Against Limerian technology, it was meaningless. The network of drones gave her all the information she needed, displaying it on her tactical overlay. She could see him clearly despite the physical barrier, his crouched form rendered in reds and oranges against the cooler background. She adjusted her aim slightly and fired through the tent material. The overlay confirmed the hit, showing the target's signature dimming as his life ebbed away. The body slumped forward, then collapsed entirely, heat gradually dissipating as blood pooled beneath him. "Excellent work, Agent 3, the voice said, satisfaction evident despite its synthetic nature. Mission accomplished. Reposition and await next target." As the voice spoke, color slowly bled back into the world around her. The trees regained their verdant hue, the sky its azure blue, the blood its crimson intensity. The pain at the base of her skull receded, leaving only a dull throb to remind her of its recent presence. Agent 3 began to sit up, preparing to relocate. That's when she noticed it. Her face was wet. Not with sweat this time, but with something else. She touched her cheek, finding trails of moisture running from her eyes. Tears. She knew the word, but couldn't comprehend why her body would produce them now, after a successful mission. Tears were a response to physical pain or extreme emotional distress, neither of which applied to her current situation. She had completed her objective. The targets had been eliminated. The mission was a success. Then came another bodily betrayal. A sudden wave of nausea gripped her, intense and overwhelming. It rose from her stomach, climbing her throat in a hot tide she couldn't suppress. She lurched forward, tearing off her helmet just in time to vomit over the edge of the platform. Her stomach heaved violently, expelling its contents as her mind reeled from the discord between what she had done and how her body was reacting. The mere thought of what had just happened, 3 men laughing one moment, dead the next, by her hand, sent another wave of pain through her, but not physical pain like what the voice had inflicted. This was different, deeper, inexplicable. Her conscious mind couldn't understand why completing her mission would cause such distress, yet her body seemed to know something she did not. As she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, Agent 3 felt a profound confusion that her limited emotional vocabulary couldn't begin to articulate. Something fundamental had shifted within her, like tectonic plates moving beneath the surface of her awareness. The voice spoke again, interrupting her troubled thoughts. Agent 3, your biometrics are showing significant anomalies. Report your status immediately. She swallowed hard, forcing the bitter taste of bile down, and retrieved her helmet. Status green. She lied, not understanding why she would do such a thing. Lying to the voice was not part of her programming. It violated the most basic parameters of her existence. Yet the words had been formed and been spoken before she could analyze the impulse, preparing to engage the next target. But as she secured her equipment and prepared to return to base, a single thought formed in her mind, unbidden and unwelcome. Those men looked like her. Not like Slamarians. They were human. Didn't that mean she was human too? Then why was she killing them? She pushed the thought away, but it refused to dissipate entirely, lingering at the edges of her consciousness like a shadow that couldn't be banished by light. Whatever was happening to her, whatever these strange physical reactions meant, she knew instinctively that she couldn't report them to the voice. Some primal part of her recognized a threat, not from the men she had killed, but from those who had ordered their deaths. Agent 3, new target identified. The voice said, its artificial tone devoid of any emotion. Coordinates 43.782 by 29.341. Distance 3 kilometers to your east. Confirmed coordinates received, she replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. The pattern was familiar. Receive coordinates, confirm, eliminate, repeat. Simple, efficient. Yet something felt different this time, as if a veil had been partially lifted from her consciousness. She hid her inner conflict, pretending everything was normal. While inside, she began to question if she would shoot another human if the voice asked. Not sure of the answer to that question. These thoughts felt alien, like they belonged to someone else. Someone she used to be, perhaps. The missions had always been clear before. Identify target, eliminate, confirm, kill. Why was everything blurry now, as if seen through fog? Agent 3, acknowledge mission parameters. The voice prompted, a hint of urgency in its usual flat tone. Parameters acknowledged. She responded automatically, moving to position. Maintain stealth protocols. Area potentially contains hostile elements. Understood, she said, the response mechanical. The sun was setting over the ruins of what had once been a thriving district. Golden light cast along shadows between the crumbling structures, creating perfect hiding places for anyone that might be watching. She moved through these shadows, her exosuit barely making a sound despite its considerable weight. She walked fast and silent through the debris-strewn streets. Broken glass and twisted metal crunched under her boots, but she moved under stealth, each step calculated for minimal sound. The coordinates took her to the base of a building, a half-collapsed structure that still reached toward the sky like a broken finger. Twisted rebar jutted from concrete wounds, and most of the windows had been blown out long ago. Only a few glinted in the dying light, like teardrops on the face of a corpse. She knew what she was supposed to do without being told, and she jumped, the exosuit propelling her upward with controlled force. The artificial muscles in her legs compressed, then released with calculated energy, sending her soaring 4 stories up. She caught a ledge with her fingertips, strengthened by the suit's exoskeleton, pulling herself up in one fluid motion. Finding a suitable vantage point on the 4th floor, she positioned herself at a window with an unrestricted view to every side of the battlefield. The crumbling concrete provided adequate cover. Nobody would spot her unless they knew exactly where to look. Position acquired, she reported, awaiting target details. Your target will be the occupants of a vessel, the voice informed her. Ship type C-17 medical transport, ETA to landing zone precisely 2 minutes. Bearing 078 degrees from your position. Medical transport? She questioned before she could stop herself, a frown forming on her face. There was a brief pause before the voice replied. Confirmed. All occupants are to be eliminated upon exit. Understood. She responded, the word automatic, rehearsed, preparing for elimination. She prepared as always, taking position and adjusting the scope of her rifle. The weapon felt like an extension of her body, familiar, comfortable, reliable. She checked the wind indicators on her HUD, calculating the necessary adjustments. The exosuit's sensors fed her data continuously: temperature, humidity, wind, all factors that could affect a shot at this distance. The moment of waiting felt different, her imagination wondering if she would be able to follow the will of the voice, or even if she would be able to refuse if she didn't want to. The thought was terrifying. Had she ever disobeyed before? She couldn't remember. Her past was a collection of fragmented images, missions blending together in a continuous stream of targets acquired and eliminated. Target approaching, the voice said. Maintain focus, Agent 3. She heard a sonic boom and followed the ship with her scope. It was a sleek transport vessel, white with green markings that seemed oddly familiar. Its engines glowed blue as it decelerated, kicking up dust and debris from the ground below. The landing struts extended smoothly as it approached the surface, compensating for the uneven terrain with precise adjustments. Confirm visual? The voice demanded. Visual confirmed. C-17 transport, white hull, green markings. She replied mechanically, though something inside her stirred at the sight of those markings. They meant something important, but the memory slipped away as she tried to grasp it. The ship touched down with surprising grace given its size, settling on a relatively flat area surrounded by rubble. Its hull bore the scars of recent conflict, carbon scoring along the starboard sight, a dent in the forward section, repair patches on the aft compartment. Whatever its mission, it had seen combat recently. She was in doubt of whether she would be able to resist, and as the ship's hatch opened and the ramp extended, the voice gave the elimination order. Eliminate all targets exiting the vessel, it commanded. Confirm order. Her finger rested against a trigger guard, not yet moving to the trigger itself. Through her scope, she watched as the first figures appeared in the doorway. It wasn't her hectic heartbeat or her trembling hands that caused her final decision to crystallize in her mind, but the sight of the group of humans from the ship. They wore white uniforms with green crosses emblazoned on their sleeves and backs. Medical personnel. One carried a container marked with the universal symbol for blood products. Another guided a hovering stretcher down the ramp, a wounded civilian strapped to it. No! Those are medical civil... The word was plucked out of her mind before she could finish, replaced by a wave of pain that made her vision blur. The agony was instant and overwhelming, radiating from somewhere above her right ear. They are hostiles, the voice stated flatly. Your assessment is incorrect. Execute your orders immediately. But they're helping! She tried again, only to be cut off by another surge of pain, more intense than the first. The pain receded slightly, allowing her to focus again, but the voice continued speaking, now with an edge she hadn't heard before. Agent 3, you are definitely displaying anomalous behavior, and you will be required to go back to the processing facility for full diagnosis after the mission is accomplished. Compliance is mandatory. She watched in horror as her world began losing color again, the punishment she had learned to fear. The vivid red crosses faded first, turning gray, then black. The blue sky bleached to white. The green of distant vegetation withered to nothing. She knew what would follow: the emptying of emotion, leaving only the mission, the target, the kill. Yet this time, before the colors had fully vanished, she purposely threw her rifle down the building. She watched it tumble through the air, hitting the facade several times before clattering to the ground below. The action brought no satisfaction, no relief. Those emotions were already being suppressed. "Agent 3, what have you done?" the voice demanded, its artificial tone somehow conveying alarm. "Retrieve your weapon immediately." Her world lost all color completely, and the voice complained, ordering her to get the rifle back. When she stood motionless, even in her state of emotionlessness, the voice lost its calm, accusing her of being defective. "Agent 3, you are malfunctioning," it stated, the words clipped and harsh. "We will recover you for second memory cleaning. Return to the extraction point immediately." "Memory cleaning," she repeated, the words hollow in her emotionless state. The words triggered a flashback in her mind, bringing memories from a white room where she was struggling on a stretcher, a Slamarian doctor staring at her with that gelatinous face, its antenna swaying from side to side as it spoke about an implant. "The subject continues to resist despite increased neurosuppression," the alien had said, its voice bubbling through translators. "Recommended full memory wipe and reimplanting of control node. Previously identity fragments must be completely eradicated." "Proceed with level 4 cleansing," another voice had responded. "Subject is valuable asset. Maximum retention of combat skills required." She returned to the present, even though the colors were still being suppressed. She made a decision, an almost emotionless decision, but one that felt so right despite knowing the voice wouldn't like it. The logical part of her mind, the only part still functioning under the suppression, calculated that the source of the voice's control must be physical, tangible, something that could be removed. She got a knife from her belt and stared at it for a moment. The blade was monomolecular, designed to slice through almost anything. "Agent 3, what are you doing?" the voice asked, a note of concern creeping into its artificial tone. The voice began to say she wasn't supposed to do anything, that her only order was to await extraction, but she didn't listen. "Agent 3, this is your final warning. Stand down and await extraction," the voice commanded. "You require maintenance." She concentrated on the exact spot on her skull that was causing pain and decisively raised the tip of the knife, pointing it at a spot above her ear. She could feel a small bump there, something that didn't belong, something foreign. The voice rose in volume, almost frantic now. "You will die! This will never work! You are supposed to—" Yet it was cut off when the knife cut through her skull, the pain spreading across her body. The agony was blinding, white-hot, consuming everything. She felt the blade connect with something metallic, then a small electrical discharge that made her muscles spasm. Blood ran warm down her neck, soaking into her collar. "Critical system error," the voice said, distorted and fading. "Neural link compromise." Then silence. Blessed silence. She felt worry for a moment, genuine fear that she had cut too deep. But the silence in her head and the returning colors told her she hadn't. The world bloomed back into vibrant life around her, the green crosses vivid against the white uniforms, the blue sky intense above, the green of distant plants rich and vital. She extracted something small and metallic from the wound, letting it fall to the floor. A control implant, now useless. The true peace only lasted a few moments. However, when suddenly a lifetime of memories returned to her at once, so vast in comparison to those of the previous months, but so incredibly lighter. She remembered her name, her rank, her mission. She remembered being Captain Barbara Bohr of the Allied Forces Reconnaissance Division. She remembered being captured during a covert operation 6 months ago. She remembered fighting as they strapped her down. The Slimerians injecting her with something that made her muscles go limp. "You will serve us now," the lead Slimerian had bubbled through his translator. "We were losing the war until we understood that your kind makes excellent weapons when properly programmed." Tears flowed down her face, but they didn't last. The wound above her ear throbbed, but the pain was clean, honest, not like the artificial agony the implant had caused. She wiped the blood with her sleeve, then checked the systems on her exosuit. Everything operational. The neural interface was separate from the control implant. "I'm Barbara Bohr," she said to herself, her voice strange to her own ears after so long. "And I know what to do now." In the Slimerian outpost, formerly a human military bunker, Blobber repeatedly tried to connect with Agent 3. Its gelatinous form moved with the darkening colors, the equivalent of frustration in its species, as it manipulated the control console with its pseudopods. "Signal lost. Attempting to re-establish connection," Blobber said, his voice bubbling through the translator, attached to its upper body. There were 2 other Slimerians close to it, unarmed operators whose bodies were more transparent than Blobber's, indicating their junior status. They moved nervously. Their antennae shook in agitation. "We lost her! She must be dead!" the first operator said, its body rippling as it spoke. "The chances that she had damaged the implant without damaging her brain were low. Statistics analysis suggests cerebral hemorrhage is the most probable outcome." "Perhaps we should activate Agent 5, suggested the second operator. The human female was showing signs of degrading compliance even before this incident. Blobber was not convinced, his antenna rigid with disagreement. That individual was different. It insisted, continuing to work the controls. She didn't need assistance in her aim, and she never failed any mission before today. Her capability rating exceeded all other agents. "Handler Blobber," the first operator began, "the protocols clearly state that when an agent goes rogue..." The operator's body exploded mid-sentence, splattering the room with translucent biological matter. Blobber and the other operator took cover in moments, sliding behind consoles as a shot through the wall got the operator right behind Blobber, who got splashed with his bodily fluids. Slimerian vital fluid dripped from the equipment and walls, giving off the characteristic ammonia smell of their species. Blobber's antenna quivered in terror as it compressed its body into the smallest possible shape, trying to hide behind a control panel. The outpost communication system activated, and Agent 3's voice was broadcasted through all speakers, yet she addressed Blobber directly. "I know where you are, and I could have killed you already, but no, that would be too easy." The voice was cold, precise, and chillingly human in its emotional clarity. "I'm getting the table salt. Stay right there."